Yes, from high atop some building in Northeast Minneapolis. I'm Jim Peters, and welcome to Jim Peters at Night for Wednesday, August 9th, 2023. It's my giant head again. And of course, we fucked with the lights even more. Although I think this still looks better. It's a work in progress, folks. What can I tell you? And also, there's another thing. I think there's a problem with the internet this evening. I don't mean here locally, I mean nationwide. We've had problems connecting to certain things, even though our connections seem to be running just fine. Specifically, we are not broadcasting live on Podbean Live tonight. We cannot connect to them. We can't. Also, the service I use to keep my show notes, which is an online program called Simple Note. And also, if you want to check that out, it's run by the people at Automatic that publish that make WordPress. It's a fantastic little program. It's completely free, and it is really, really simple. That's all I wanted. But anyway, can't connect to them either. So I lost my show notes for this evening. I managed to print. I managed to print. Remember print? I managed to print part of them out, but they crashed before I couldn't. So I don't know what's going on. Like I said, I think I may be. This has happened before where I've noticed this, that there's that even though our connection is solid, we can't connect to other places, and usually that's a sign that there's some hanky panky afoot. That would be afoot to you. I want to thank David from San Francisco. He was our very first caller to call in on our fifth show last night. We had a wonderful talk. David is a longtime listener of mine on my previous radio shows, a regular caller, and he said he had more trouble actually finding my website for the show than actually calling in. I just want to tell you that because you see this thing right down here, video call in, jimatnight.com/call. Okay, we're not taking audio phone calls, we're taking video phone calls, and we're probably, according to Talkers Magazine, the first show in American history to do this. But it's really simple. You go to that URL in any device you're on with a Google Chrome web browser. You click the button at the top of the screen, the giant blue button. There's instructions under that, but you don't really need them. If you've ever been online for more than 30 seconds, click the button. You go to a preview screen. You get to check out. You get to check your teeth out and your hair out, and make sure your camera and your mic's working, and you're stuck on the queue. So it's very simple. Now, this show's in 3 parts. You probably have never watched it before because this is only our 6th episode. I talk for about half an hour. I do basically kind of a monologue of the day's events or anything I feel like talking about. We have a guest on almost always, and unlike stupid radio or even television, uh, we these are lengthy interviews, and they're not as lengthy as Rogan. Frankly, I don't understand why you're spending 3 hours of your day watching him, even though he's really good. I won't spend 3 hours. I won't make love to Cindy Crawford or Britney Spears for 3 hours. I won't do that. I won't do anything for 3 hours. So anyway, we talked to people for about 30, 40 minutes. Today, our guest is Tim Conaway, longtime friend of mine. Tim's claim to fame is that he was the editor of Hustler magazine in the 80s and 90s at the height of its popularity. He does a hilarious Larry Flint impression. He worked for Larry for years. And he went on to edit about a dozen other different magazines besides that. I always get the confused. It was either Men's Fitness or Fit something. I can't remember. We'll talk to him. He'll tell us. And he's running for president in 2024. So on the the no party, which is what he put down in the forms where he has to fill out for the election commission. It says a party affiliation. He put down no. So now it's the no party. Well, anyway, he's going to be our guest tonight. Now, if you want to, also, we've never tried this before, too. If you want to talk to him, if you want to ask him a question, call up while he's on the air with us. You go to that jimatnight.com/call. And it's like I said, it's very simple. David said he had I'm repeating this. He said he had a harder time finding our website than actually calling in. He said calling in was easy as pie, and it is. We're making this easy. So anyway, thanks to him for doing that. The other thing you can do is there's a telephone number down there. See that text voicemail, like right here? Yeah. What the hell? I'm not doing mirror here. I refuse to do that. 408-458-5088. You can leave us a voicemail for 30 seconds. You can send us a text. Somebody texted me the other day and said, "Do you ever do you ever wash your hair?" That amused me. Whoever you are, that's good. I like that. I don't know who that is, but okay, that made me laugh. So that's fine. So we haven't had a lot of people using this. Well, you can start using that too. I'm reading my show notes off a printed page here. My apologies. So like I said, okay, we're on 7 video networks. We're usually live at Podbean Live, audio only, and tonight we're not. We could not connect to them. I'm actually thinking about canning that. We can always upload the audio from our video feeds to Podbean as a podcast, which is the idea. The idea is that once we go live on Podbean, our our live feed is turned into a podcast when we're done, and that's actually what we wanted. But we could always just upload that. I don't know how many people are watching or listening, and that's the point. I just misspoke. But my point is that we don't want people to listen. We want people to watch. I understand if you're in your car, but you're probably not going to think of Podbean. You're probably going to go to YouTube or Rumble and run the audio from the Rumble video feed through your car radio, the stereo. That's probably what you're going to do. So I don't know whether this is worth the trouble or not. I don't. We definitely want the audio podcast. We definitely want that after the fact. I don't know if going live on Podbean is actually worth the trouble. And tonight we're not even doing it. So there's that too. Uh, so Tim's a guest tonight. Tomorrow night, our guest is Jazz Shaw, who's supposed to be the guest on last Thursday and on Monday, but we've had trouble. First of all, last Thursday we didn't do a show at all because we could not. We had camera problems here in our little studio. We couldn't mount the show. They couldn't put it out. On Monday we ran his pre-recorded interview and it crashed right in the middle of it, and we couldn't get it going again. So, and not only that, you got to hear what this guy has to say. He's really interesting. He knows a lot of shit. It was a good interview, so we're going to rerun it on Thursday. It's basically a week late, but we're still going to do it anyway. I mean, you should hear this. So he's going to be the guest tomorrow. We don't have a guest lined up for Monday. Hopefully, we're working on that. And also our blog on our website, jimatnight.com, should be running on Monday too. We actually technically got it going today. So now we have to fill it with a bunch of posts. I told Murray Sabrin we put a link to his latest book in there, other stuff too. I think we're going to take our wonderful call from Vladimir Putin on last Tuesday. I think we're going to break that out and just post it online just for the hell of it because it's pretty damn funny. So we're gonna there. This show is not this is not really comedy per se, but we're gonna venture into the comedy every once in a while. We're gonna do that, and that I wanted to kind of start that with that. So that's why, and the guy who does that, he does really brilliant work. Okay, so what's on the news today? All right, we're talking about Jazz Shaw, and if I was going to be a good host, I would save this for tomorrow, but I don't want to save it. So if you go to hotair.com tonight, you will see an article by Jazz Shaw about the fact that David Grush, the guy who was one of the 3 whistleblowers and the primary whistleblower for the UFO stuff that happened 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago, he is being harassed now by what appears to be the government. And the harassment specifically is that Grush says he got a call from the online newspaper, The Intercept, and Jazz confirmed this. Apparently, he talked to them. He said, "Yeah, we did do this." He confirmed this, uh, and they were questioning his medical history when he was in the military. He did at least one tour of Afghanistan. Grutch did, and he has post traumatic stress syndrome disorder. It's like PTSD. He has it, and they questioned him about that. And like he said, and like Jazz said too, that literally the only people who would know about that are his doctors and the military. And he said there's one sheriff in some county somewhere, I think in Pennsylvania, for various reasons that I won't get into, who he said also knows. But Jazz said that he checked with that guy, and that guy absolutely confirmed with him that he did not tell the press about this. Now, I don't know if you remember this, but Grutch actually testified the fact that his not only has his career, but even his life has been put in danger by talking about this stuff. And that's what I want to address here. You have to understand how often this has happened in the last 50 years. First of all, let's go back to the Kennedy assassination. You remember the comedian and actor Richard Belzer? He died a couple of years ago, I think was. He was on Law and Order Special Victims Unit. He played John Munch. Matter of fact, the interesting thing, he played John Munch longer than any other actor has ever played the same character on TV, if I'm correct. I think 25 years, and he played it on 6 different shows, even though 2 or 3 of those shows were just guest spots. But still, he really he made a living playing this character. What you probably don't know about Belzer is he wrote 6 books, and he was basically a conspiracy theorist. He was, and his first book was about the JFK assassination. He did 2 about the JFK assassination. One is called UFOs JFK, and I I can't remember. I had this stuff written down. Now I don't. See, for the wonders of the internet and my giant head. See that? It's huge. Color's better tonight though. And and so he wrote a book, and I have this book. I could not find it in my library, called Hit List. I just started buying Kindle books. I don't like them, but when you can get 3 or 400 books in a tiny little device and they're not taking up shelf space and you don't have to put them in luggage to go on vacation, all that sort of stuff, it's pretty handy. I have the hard copy of Hit List and I couldn't find it, but I've read it. So what that is he and his co-author, they did 74, I think it was profiles, 70 something profiles of all the people who were in Dealey Plaza the moment JFK got shot that died under mysterious circumstances. And what he figured out is that, and God bless him for transparency, he actually published the formula they used. There's a lengthy discussion in there how they determine this. He said that the chances of those people dying under natural circumstances, that amount, compared to the background population, was something like several trillion to 1. You got that? This is the number of people who died in Dealey Plaza. Within, I think it was within 5 or 10 years of the assassination. It was like 70 individuals. There were about 250 people standing in the Plaza Square, that triangle space, green space next to the Texas Book Depository when the shots were fired. There were about 200, 300 people there. And 70, out of them, I can't remember the exact amount, 74, something like that, which would be about a quarter of them died within 5 years of the shooting. And that's really, really weird. Now, I've studied the UFO thing for 30 years. It's astonishing how many people have seen or said they've seen UFOs and have met weird circumstances. I'm going to give you 2 examples. First example is a guy named Philip Schneider, and you can look this up online. You'll read all about Philip. Philip was a geologist who worked for the U.S. government. He was hired to do geology work at a top secret base the U.S. military was building in the Archa. I can never pronounce this right. Archipelago Mesa in Dulce, New Mexico. Now, you've probably heard about the secret base in Dulce. The rumor for years that there's ETs down there. I'm not saying that, but but it's pretty much confirmed there's a military base in that mesa, and um, Schneider said he did some of the geology work to build it, and so they have giant boring machines, supposedly, and he talks about this too. He says there's 129 undocumented underground bases for the military in the United States. That's what he said, and he died in 1997. So that's even old at this point. It's what you have to understand is that if you have the technology and the money, it's fairly easy to build underground structures. You got these giant boring machines. Hell, Elon Musk owns a company that does this. The company is called the Boring Company, which is a really hilarious name for it. But giant boring machines that basically they drill through rock, and the more sophisticated ones, the newer ones, actually lay concrete walls while they're moving forward. And they can move forward at about a foot a day from what I understand. But okay, that sounds slow to you. Man, you leave that thing running 24/7. Shit, you have a giant, giant hole in the earth in just a couple of weeks. So he was tired to do this. Now, and this is his story. He says he had to go down a hole. He said, normally they drill vertical holes in anticipation of sending these machines down and drilling horizontal holes, which are the actual base. Yeah. So he said they were drilling these holes, and he said something really weird was happening, and his superiors asked him to go down there and check it out. So he did. He got in an elevator cage and he went down. I think he said he went down about 60 feet. I can't remember what it was, and there in a clearing, they run into a giant cavern, and there waiting for him, he said, were three 7-foot tall gray extraterrestrials, aliens. They're standing there watching him. And he says he panicked because he said he didn't know what the hell he was looking at. It was completely weird. He panicked and he took out his pistol, which he always carried just to shoot vermin and stuff like that. He shot she shot 2 of them, and he said he killed at least one of them, and he said all hell broke loose, and he said it was really weird because, he noticed ahead of time that in this particular instance, he had done these digs before. For some reason, there was a bunch of green berets hanging around the dig site, and that was unusual. He said he'd never seen that before. So, at any rate, he shot one of these aliens. All hell broke loose, and all of a sudden, there's a bunch of green berets down this hole, and a bunch of aliens, and a bunch of people. People, if you want to call the aliens people, they're all shooting at each other. And his evidence for this, and this is really weird. And if you look online, you'll find videos of him. So he said one of the aliens with a ray shot off some of his fingers, and you had to see his hand because I've never seen um, a wound like that ever, whether either fresh or healed, because it looked like, and I can't remember which hand it was. It was like his 4 fingers. It looked like the tips of them had melted off. That was the really weird thing, and they were cut at a diagonal. I mean, this is not the type of cut you'd get putting your finger through a rotary saw. That it wasn't. It didn't look like that. It was just very strange. It looked like his hand had partially melted. That's what it looked like, which would be consistent with, I guess, some sort of high temperature laser or something like that. Anyway, he contends that the only reason he got out of there is because a Green Beret, a Marine, stuck him back on the elevator and pushed the button. He said that Marine who did that, he said, lost his life. 60 people or 60 Americans died in the shootout, and apparently well over 100 aliens. And he says that what he found out in retrospect is that there's parts of the government that knew the aliens were down there and didn't tell them. And of course, that really pissed a bunch of people off. Now, Schneider's story has been anonymously confirmed by higher ups that Richard Dolan and other researchers say they've talked to firsthand, but they can't give out their names. They can't. So you have to take that with a grain of salt. But Dolan says he's confirmed this story. Some of the details might have been a little off, but he said the story is more or less confirmed true by other people in the military. So, okay, so you're wondering, well, all right, so Schneider lived through that, and that's wonderful. Okay, so he decides, he's told by in no uncertain terms, you can't talk about this. He said that, that you cannot talk about this. But after a couple of years, this was in 1979. After a few years, I guess his conscience or whatever got the best of him, and he decided, fuck it, I'm going to start talking about it. And he started posting online, but he started to go to UFO Connect conventions and stuff and talking about this. And he also said, in no uncertain terms, matter of fact, that the last speech he ever gave, which was a couple months before he died, he told everyone in the room, and by this time he's drawing pretty big crowds. He told everyone in the room, he said, if I'm ever dead by suicide, I can assure you I did not do that. The government killed me and staged it. And wouldn't you know, I think it's in March 1997, Philip Schneider apparently committed suicide, and it was staged, or It appeared to be an auto asphyxia um, event, where people they basically, they try to they partially strangle themselves while they're masturbating. That's the thing. It's autoerotic asphyxia. That's what it's called. That's what it is. But and you can see this too. His autopsy photos are public, and they're gruesome, but they're public. But people pointed out who have looked at this have said that, or these weren't the autopsy photos. These were the photos that were taken at the scene when they found him. That there's knots in the audio in the tie-ups in the there's knots in the ropes that you can't do on yourself. Now, I don't know enough about knotting and roping to tell. I can't tell, but people said you cannot tie these knots on yourself. It's physically impossible. You need another person to do it. So, okay, now Schneider's dead. I guess some people, somebody somewhere got tired of him talking about this shit, and they offed him. And you're thinking, well, our government wouldn't do that. Ah, ha, 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 ha. You're naive. Yeah, that's right. No, the government will do all sorts of shit. Here's another example. I got two examples here. A guy named John Murphy. So I don't know if you ever heard of the Kecksburg UFO incident. You look this up online too. There's an entry for it on Wikipedia. In December 1965, some weird thing crashed in the forest right outside of a small town in Pennsylvania named Kecksburg. And the government will tell you that it was a meteorite, but there's quite a few people, about, from what I understand, 1 to 2 dozen, who actually went into the forest. At first, they thought a plane had crashed, but people had noticed that this thing, and also was tracked on radar too, it came from the northwest. Or in other words, it kind of sort of came from Russia over the northern part of North America. And they tracked it. It changed. It was meteors don't change direction. They don't. They just fly straight in because they're not powered. They're flying off of gravity and inertia. This thing apparently changed direction several times before it landed, and the people who actually saw it land said it appeared to attempt to make a soft landing. It appeared to slow down before it crashed, even though it was not successful. So, anyway, this device, which everyone who saw it gave the same description of, it was kind of shaped like an acorn. It was about 12 feet high. The description everybody gave, it was about the size of a Volkswagen, maybe a little bigger. They said everyone said you could get one person in there if there was a person in there. And around there was a rim on the lower edge, and around the rim there were strange hieroglyphic type writing. So it kind of looked like a foreign version of a Mercury spacecraft, basically. That's kind of what it looked like. And it was about that size, maybe a little bigger. So, at any rate, about 1 to 2 dozen people went into the forest to find it. The military showed up ASAP, like immediately, and kicked everybody out, and apparently took the thing out of the forest covered on a tarp covered on a truck, a flatbed truck. And they told everyone it was a meteorite, and whatever you saw, you're wrong. That's what they told the government or the populace. This is one of the most. There's few UFO incidents that have been more that are better proof that the government is covering shit than this one, because people saw this. People saw this thing with their own eyes laying on the ground, and the government said, "No, you didn't see that. What you saw is a meteorite, a giant rock." That's what they said. And they basically just told everybody, just forget what you think you saw. You didn't see it. Well, a guy named John Murphy was a reporter from one of the local Kecksburg radio stations. And you gotta have to understand, in 1965, radio was still a relatively big thing. And small towns had radio stations. My small town where I grew up had a radio station, and it was kind of a big deal there too. And those small, even prairie radio stations had reporters, because they were doing their job, and that was informing the public. A lot of places didn't have newspapers, or at least now local newspapers. So the radio stations basically became the front line of the media, the local media in small towns and small places. A guy named John Murphy, and I can't remember that. I had it on my stupid notes, but I can't remember what the actual call letters for that station is. You can find out. he interviewed a bunch of people and put together a radio documentary that he was going to they were going to air on the radio station about a week after the crash. He said, and this was confirmed by people that worked at the station with him, that two men dressed in black suits, ostensibly who worked for the government, came in and dragged him into a vacant office, unused office in the radio station, talked to him for half an hour. And when he got out of that meeting, not only did he edit his documentary basically to take out anything of any importance, but even his wife said he was basically never the same person ever again. That's what they were. That's what she said, and other people who knew him said the same thing. He became despondent. His personality changed. So no one really knows what was in this documentary, but the office manager of the radio station said that she saw a photo that, of course, they can't run on the radio, but that he had collected, which very clearly showed this craft. It was the acorn-shaped spacecraft laying on the ground. She said it was clear as day. It was a very, very distinct photo that she saw it. Apparently, the guys from the government confiscated it. So this is in 1965. A couple years go by, and like Philip Schneider, John Murphy decides, fuck this, I'm going to start telling people bullshit. He says bullshit. So he started, instead of redoing the radio thing, he started writing a book. And he goes on vacation in Ventura, California, and he gets hit by a hit-and-run driver. He gets killed by a hit-and-run driver on some side frontage road out in the middle of nowhere. Now, okay, that may be an accident, and it may not. That's the thing. That's the point. If you follow this enough, like Belzer did, if you follow this enough, you start to realize there's all sorts of people that seem to know stuff that die under mysterious circumstances. And I agree with Belzer. It seems to be way above the standard background normal averages of what it would be in the population if you take a group. So there you go. So Grudge says the same things happened to him. Now he said this even before this thing just came out. He said at that hearing that his life had been threatened for what he was talking about. The best anybody can think of is the reason the Pentagon doesn't want this stuff to get out is because now they've spent so much money and also illegal activity trying to cover it up that a lot of people go to jail if it ever comes out that they were doing this. And people don't, as you might imagine, people don't want to go to jail. I'll give you an alternate theory, which is the tinfoil hat theory, that the extraterrestrials are in touch with the military or the government of the U.S. and they are telling them not to do this. That they have their own reasons for not wanting to tell the public yet. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. We talked about this too, and I talked about this with Jazz about the fact that a lot of people think they're trying to dribble this out slowly to make the public slowly come to the realization that the ETs are here, and so people won't panic. But it's anyone's guess at this point of what's actually going on. All we know is that Drutch has his life threatened, and Jazz Shaw basically confirmed it. So if you want to check Jazz's article out on Hot Air, it's up there now, and we will put a link in our blog when our blog is up and running on Monday. We'll do that. Now, I want to introduce to you a very famous man. Ladies and gentlemen, on your screen, joining me, that's Tim Conaway right there. Hi, Tim. How you doing?
Oh, pretty good. How about you?
Oh, we can hear each other. That's good. The technology is working. Yeah,
that's a nice plus.
Yeah, and you got your head's nice and big. That's good too.
Well, yeah, I can make it there.
No. I wasn't trying to get you to change it. I wasn't. I like it.
Okay.
You're a very attractive man.
Well, at one time.
We're all old.
When it mattered.
All right. So now, Tim, like I said earlier, Tim is running for president in 2024. Before we start here, Tim, why don't you give And I told the viewers that you were the former editor-in-chief of Hustler magazine. Why don't you give and also that you edited a whole bunch of other magazines, and I can never remember any of them. Was it the Muscle and Fitness or Men's Health, or which one was that?
Yeah, Muscle and Fitness was one of them.
Muscle and Fitness, right?
Yeah, and uh, there were Flex and another magazine that we started out. It was a sports training magazine, and then it got changed to Men's Health or Men's Fitness, and I can't remember the names of all of them.
And it was about a dozen, right?
Oh yeah, well, over the years, I was editor of some of them, and then the last 10 years that I was with Flint was we added about 33 magazines of all different types. The vertical interest, we called them the hobbyist magazines, Camera and Dark Room, video games and computer entertainment, with Hot Boats, SWAT magazine, which all over the place, RIP, a hard rock music magazine. So yeah, we had a whole lot of different
You
ones.
were basically like the group publisher then at that point, right?
Well, yeah, I was the editorial director,
Uh-huh.
and it was my job to either get these things started, or some of them we brought in. We had Big Beautiful Woman and Running Times, and so when we bring them in, just get them into the system and get them out on time.
And I think I've told you this. Greg Gutfeld succeeded you at some point as the editor of Muscle and Fitness, if I'm right. But you said you've never met him, correct?
No, I haven't. That would after my time. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
who was there, what they did.
he's got way more money now than both of us.
Well, yeah, he made the right move. He went into comedy, which is, one way to do when you've got your your hair pulling out kind of job.
Well, not to belabor this, but can you tell the story about how you met Flint? Because I think it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I was working for a newspaper in Eastern Kentucky, and that's where Larry Flint is from. And so when he came out with the issue in late 1975, early 76, with pictures of Jackie Onassis naked on a beach in Greece, it made a lot of headlines, and so I was assigned to do an interview with him. And he actually stopped by. This was in Ashland, Kentucky. He stopped by the newspaper office one Saturday on his way either to or from Columbus to where he had grown up, and in Magoffin County. And he spent 2 hours talking to me, and about 10 minutes of it, we talked about porn. And the rest of the time, we talked about the influence of advertisers, the First Amendment, the hypocrisy of government and preachers. And I found it very interesting. And so I wrote an article along those lines, and the executive editor threw the article on my desk and said, "This guy's just a common criminal. We're not running this." So when I sent him, I called him and said, I apologize. You spent a lot of time. And he asked me to send a copy of the story. In those days, we only had mail. Everything was typed out. So I sent it up, and about a week later, I heard from him, and he offered me a job. And so I thought, well, that sounds like the way to go. So that's how it all got started. And my interest in the magazine was, again, the government taking down people in government, and taking down the preachers, and he had run-ins with some advertisers, and so he had this anti-smoking campaign that he ran because cigarette people turned him down, and cigarette advertisers turned him down. And he said, "Okay, well, I'll go the other way." And so it was.
If you stop and think about that, you'd think that the people the audience of Hustler magazine would have been the perfect place to advertise cigarettes.
Well, yeah, that was it. It was aimed at the blue collar worker, the blue collar guy, the everyday guy, the guy having a few beers after
Yeah.
work, and uh, and but people. I mean, I don't know if it influenced people to stop smoking, but uh, people really liked the attitude of the magazine, and the average guy feels like he's overlooked by government. That he's on the outside. He's certainly overlooked by all the big corporations. You know, all these guys are working stiffs. They don't get the breaks
Well,
that.
I gotta talk you personally up a little bit because some of that is your voice too. I mean, you edited that magazine at the height of its popularity. I mean, so
Well, yeah, it was a combined voice. It was basically, Larry told us, I have ideas. It's up to you guys to make them work. And he had assembled a team from all over, some radical publications and some, we were all kind of outsiders in the publishing world. And so we honed in on what it was he wanted to say, and gave the magazine that identity.
that was headquartered in Columbus, Ohio until when? When did you move to LA?
At the beginning of 1977, and
Uh-huh.
then we were in Los Angeles. Well, it's still based in Los Angeles.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, you did that. You worked for Flint until what, to when, or what year?
Uh, well, I worked there right after we went out there. About the time we went out there, Larry found God, and he went just a little bit nuts. And a bunch of us had been through the process of trying to figure out what he wanted and develop the identity of this magazine. And now he was like a completely different mindset, and none of us had the energy to go through that
Well, was
again.
that before or after he got shot?
This was right before he got shot, and then he got shot. I had already put in my resignation, but I hadn't left yet at the time that happened. But that threw everything up in the air, and so that's when I was out at other magazines, like Muscle and Fitness and some of these other guys, and then in 1984, he the company, the decision was made to expand outside of the adult entertainment industry into all of these other magazines. And I came in, my specialty was streamlining and, getting the most out of what we had to work with. And so we were able to bring in all these other magazines without bringing on huge staffing expense, and we were pretty successful at it until 1995. The price of paper went up 50% or more across the board, and we bought rail cars full of paper to park next to the printer. As we had 36 magazines going on regular frequency, so everybody at the top level got laid off at that point. And it wasn't just us, it was anybody who printed things. So no other magazine companies were hiring anybody, particularly at a high level. And so I went into sales. I sold advertising space for several years, and then I sold licensed rights to use rights protected photography at a photo agency. And then I got into the ink manufacturing world through answering an ad, do you know about printing and color? And so I was with an ink company, and that's how I ended up. I'm in near Minneapolis now, and was transferred around to a few places. And, manufacturing was a whole new adventure. But everything works the same way. You have
Yeah.
to find out, well, do root cause analysis of where your problems are, where the problem starts. You streamline operations. You improve the efficiency of operations, and that's why I was at several different locations here in the U.S. Until finally I was here.
And before you talk about why you're running for president, right now, I just want to point out to the viewers, if you want to ask Tim a question, you can call up. Go to jimatnight.com/call, hit the button, and we'll put you on the screen. Did you have any problems doing that, Tim?
I had no problems.
No, I know. We had our first caller last night. That guy said he had no problems either. It's very
Yeah,
simple.
worked
So yes,
great.
so do that.
But yeah, so the running for president is uh, I've never been a big fan of the federal government. It's the power of government over the citizens is, uh, to me, it goes against the Constitution, what the founding fathers wanted to do. It's the reason that the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments were added because people were concerned of the powerful federal government of what that would turn into. So and I'm really tired of the stranglehold on politics by the two existing parties that have no interest in the American people. They're interested in making money.
Yeah.
And and so I've decided to run and bring to the situation this experience that I've had in life, where federal government is way too big, so it can be streamlined, and it can be streamlined and in the process made more efficient rather than less efficient.
So last night we had on Mark Tapscott, the congressional reporter for the Epoch Times.
Mhm.
He's about our age. He's 70. He's had that gig for 40 years. And you said basically the exact same thing you just said. The federal bureaucracy is way too big. The two parties basically are the same. Especially when it
Oh
comes
yeah.
to the debt, especially when it comes to financial matters.
Mhm.
There's no difference. And I asked him, I said, what's the most depressing thing about your job? And he said, I for 40 years I've listened to politicians make the same promises and never follow through, and this
Well,
just goes on and on and on.
yeah, well, they do it to get reelected, and then they raise money for the Democratic National Corporation and the Republican National Corporation, and they promise to get elected, and then they go in and they don't do anything, or they make the situation worse. But the federal government can be reduced in size while efficiency is gained, and of course that reduces the cost of stuff. And my approach, I'm doing videos that are on YouTube. You can access them through my website, which is conawayforprez.com. That's CONAWAY numeral 4 PREZ.com. And you can look at them. And I don't just talk about the problems because everybody knows what those are, but I do a little root cause analysis of why it is the way it is, how it varies from what the Constitution allows for the federal government to actually do, and then the solution to paring things down.
Yeah, we're gonna have our blog on our website up and running by Monday, and we'll make certain we'll have a link to that. So, are you familiar with the CIA Act of 1949? Have you ever heard of this?
Well, not
Okay,
off the top of my head. I might
I,
know what it is. I don't know it by
yeah.
name.
All right. Okay. So what it is, and maybe you've heard of this before, that it's a law that allows the CIA to take with no impunity at all money from other federal agencies for its own. In other words, it can go to the Department of Interior and say, your budget's $50 bazillion and we want 10 bazillion of it, and there's nothing anybody can do. They can just take it. And this apparently is where all the black budget money in the United States comes from, mostly. So I just read something recently where some guy in the aerospace industry was saying that a quarter of all the money spent by the federal government is now black money. It's totally unaccounted for completely. That's bullshit.
Well, and I mean, I'd say 100% of it is not accounted for in an accurate and timely fashion. If you try to look up, as I've been doing, what is being spent by this department and that department, you're lucky if you can find anything past 2020. Sometimes you can get stuff for 2021, but everybody is, a year and a half or 2 years behind in doing the final accounting on what they're spending. And, in terms of black money, there are so many there are 15 departments in the federal government, but underneath them are anywhere from 3 to 35 subgroups that are agencies, bureaus, divisions, programs. And in a lot of these programs, if you read the Constitution and if you read the part about Congress and what Congress is authorized to do, Congress isn't authorized to do a whole lot of these things that they've done. They're spending money on these programs, and the program is supposed to help this group or that group, but it goes through a federal department into the federal sub-department out to some local community organization. And, by the time it gets to where it's supposed to get, this passed through a lot of hands. And of course, all those hands have to take their share of the thing, for their operating costs or whatever it is that they want to budget them under. So, the money is, it's not well shepherded, and we saw that in the case of the money that was supposed to feed people in Minnesota, and these groups that, I forget what the group name was, but they fraudulently took $250 million, which never put a bite of food into anybody's mouth.
Right.
The people that were supposed to get it, the shelters and the food programs that actually help people, never saw any of this money because of the way this stuff is handed out.
It's
And
astonishing how long they kept that going. That's what really surprises me, how long it took anybody to notice nobody was getting the money.
well, yeah, the people who weren't getting the money, they didn't really know what was going on. And unfortunately, they can't go directly to the state and get it. One of the excuses was, well, there are 2,000 of these different organizations here, and it came out through the FDA and into this state. It came into part of the agriculture department here, but there were, as I read, there were 52 people assigned to this, and they're saying, well, we can't do 2,000 of these, so that's of these different agencies, so that's why we have to go to these community organizations or whatever these things are called. And I did some math on it, and if they'd set it up the right way, these people would have been handling, the 52 people here would have been handling about 10 groups a day. So I don't know why they were too busy to do that, but that was we're too busy to handle all this, so we got to do it the other way.
Well, Tim, you don't understand. They're too busy.
Well, yeah, it's again, lazy federal government, and to
Yeah.
streamline this process, you take out all these middle players, get the money right to these people. It isn't that hard to do. It isn't hard to set
I
up.
think the average person thinks the same thing I do, and that it bugs the crap out of me that people they can fuck this stuff up and there's no consequences for anybody.
Yeah,
Heads
well,
should roll.
the people who fraudulently took this money, and some of their applications, to be in line to get this money, didn't even list a place of business. I mean, there were blanks on the application form that should have been glaring, but well, no, we're going to throw all this money out there. But yeah, nobody in the federal government has lost a job or been suspended or suffered any other kind of consequence for not properly looking at the applications, for not following up on this kind of stuff. And this is typical. So when you say black money from the CIA, I mean, all of it is, once Congress passes that legislation, it goes into this big funnel called the federal government. And, and then it passes, it's like a salad spinner, except there's a hole in the side and, it just goes out, it just spins out everywhere. So, I think that's the major problem in the United States. And these agencies have now taken to making up their own rules and regulations that they don't have. To me, they don't have the power to do. They weren't entrusted with those as part of the act of Congress that created them or created these departments. Executive orders that's like a memo coming down from the CEO. The president says, you got to operate this way, you got to operate that way. That's internal in the federal government, but executive orders can't make new law. And that's what we're seeing a lot of too, is, they can't get what they want from Congress. So the president makes an executive order that actually makes a new law.
And it's astonishing when this stuff is actually brought to court and contested. It's astonishing how often they lose, but unless you actually take it to court, it stands.
Yeah, and that's a big problem because they know they can get away with it. They know it's expensive to challenge it. It's a time-consuming process, and unless you had a group. I think it would be several groups of people who were constantly looking at this stuff and immediately challenging it. But that isn't happening. People just go along with it. This idea that the president can tell you what kind of light bulb you can have or what kind of water heater you can have, that's, by issuing an executive order, that's not constitutional. They should be issuing orders to these agencies to get the job done in an efficient fashion, or somebody suffers. But then, the entire federal government is one big union.
And forgive me, it's also just fucking not American either. I don't need the government to tell me what kind of light bulb I can use.
Well, exactly, and it's unconstitutional. The one part of government, the third part of government, which is the Supreme Court, which decides if laws are constitutional or not constitutional. That's their job. And this court is doing a very good job of that.
Yeah.
Everybody says they took away, women's rights because of the abortion thing. All they said was that abortion is not an area that Congress or the president has any constitutional authority to act on.
What is, forgive me, is it the 9th or the 10th Amendment that says Congress, anything not explicitly written in the Constitution for Congress to do goes to the states, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Right. And of course, that's exactly what happened here, is that there's nothing in the Constitution even approaching abortion. Nothing.
Right. That isn't one of the areas that's covered. There's, again, read the Constitution, but which most people don't do, most people aren't schooled on, but there are very few things that Congress is actually given the authority in the Constitution to make laws about. The Constitution, the federal government was set up because we have a republic of independent states. And the states, each state works independent of the other state. They do things individually, but there are certain areas where, as a group, one state could not effectively take action. So treaties with foreign powers, a military, a navy
Right.
that
Interstate commerce, when you're talking about two
protects,
states,
yeah,
right?
interstate commerce, the money, uh, uh, handling money, taxation to pay for these things. Those are that's what the federal government is supposed to be. It's supposed to be just kind of bridge that handles all the things that no individual state can handle, and that was it. It was supposed to be. The idea was it would actually be subservient to the states because it's handling these other matters, but otherwise each state is in control of itself.
Yeah.
Well, what we've got now is a federal government that runs everything, and they try to tell the states what to do. And if you get money from the federal government, it's taxpayer dollars. But even though it's supposed to be, doing stuff for the citizens, it's not free. There are
No.
all kind of uh, there's all kind of strings attached to it. All
And
kind
that's
of
that's what pisses me off the most. So you got all these federal programs, especially education is a really good example. And you talked about this previously about the fact we shouldn't even have a Department of Education federally. We shouldn't. And there's a
no,
lot of people that agree with you. But the federal government will say, well, they go to the states and say, we'll give you a bunch of money if you do this. So
hmm
they effectively control the situation because everybody loves free money or what they've perceived as free money. So
yes,
then, the states basically fall in line. Occasionally, a state won't. I think like Florida did something recently. I can't remember what it was, where they basically told the federal government, "Fuck you, we're not taking your money," and they didn't do it. But that doesn't happen very often because people like free money. You
yeah.
know,
Well, and of course, as you say, but it's not free.
it's
It's
not free, right? That's
all
right.
this
Yeah.
stuff comes with it. So yeah, it's the federal government has grown too large and too powerful. It tries to control the citizens instead of serving the citizens. So it has to be brought into line. And for the good and the future of the country, the federal government has to get back to the original idea, serve that purpose, let the states handle their own business in their own way, as long as it's not an interstate matter or a matter with foreign countries.
So if people want to help you, what do they do?
Well,
I told
I'm
the story. I told the story before you came on about the fact that you had to declare a party, so you're the no party. Is that right?
yes, as I'm no party because uh, I have no party affiliations. That's the other reason that I can get things done is I don't have to fit my actions into a party agenda.
Uh-huh.
I'm not a salesperson for any of the parties. I'm not collecting money for them. Well, what I'm about to put up on my website is a page with there's like three ways to help. One is, uh, and to me, this is really important. It doesn't impact my campaign directly, but if there are other people who feel the same way, that these party allegiances limit your choices and would limit somebody's ability to do the job in Congress or in the legislature or as a state attorney general, as a state governor, other people who feel the same way should run for these offices. Uh, because one person isn't going to be able to do this. If there were, we saw that 20 people in the Republican Party held up the Speaker of the House vote until they got some stuff they wanted.
Yeah.
And so if we had 20 or 30 people in the House and we had just as few as 5 people, but maybe 10 people in the Senate who weren't beholden to any party agendas, to the party money, um, that would have a major impact. That would force compromises and force actions that otherwise can't be done. But the same thing needs to happen at the state level and state legislatures and the governors' houses. The attorney generals are key because of the critical crime problems that states are facing with the very liberal, woke attorney generals, not just at the state level, but at the county level, run for these seats on the county level. So that's one way to help. And like I said, it doesn't impact my campaign directly. The other way is I'm going to need people to um, help me circulate petitions and get names so that I can get my name on the ballot in all the states. The Democrats and the Republicans who wrote the federal election laws, have set it up so they automatically get on. Their people don't have to put out petitions and get names, but in most states, any other candidate does, and so that's to me the most important thing.
Well, you've talked about this before, about the fact that basically the federal election system in the United States is set up to only accommodate two parties.
Right.
The two parties have they've gone out of their way to make certain it's very difficult for anybody else to do it.
Oh, exactly. To meet all the standards and
Yeah.
requirements, it's very difficult. The libertarians do it, but the libertarians
Can't
don't.
get their shit together.
Well, they don't ever campaign.
That's right.
But they can get on the ballot, but
Right.
don't know. You've never heard anything from any of their candidates. And then the third way to help is with a financial donation. I'm not looking at that right now, but when I set that up, the maximum donation from anybody, any person or entity, would be $20.
Yeah.
It's and I'm not going to run a traditional campaign. I'm not going to try to buy the election. It's going to be more on social media, through podcasts, and trying to reach out to the people who don't vote. In 2016, and I haven't seen figures for 2020, but 2016, 40%, it was a little more than 40% of Americans who were eligible to register to vote hadn't even registered to vote, let alone, not casting their vote.
Yeah.
And when I talk to people about, politics and voting, a lot of people, and particularly younger people, say they don't vote, and I ask why, and they say because they don't have a choice. They don't feel like the candidates they're offered, they're not interested in either one of them. There's this lie that is told by the Democrats and Republicans, and it's picked up by the media, which has stopped thinking for itself and is just living off, whatever crumbs are handed out by the people in power. But there's this lie that if you don't vote for one of the major candidates, that you're wasting your vote. And that's because, well, yeah, they don't want anybody to, you got to vote Democrat or you got to vote Republican. You got to vote for one of these two. No choice. It's a bad choice either way. So
you stop and think about that. The logic about that is absurd. I mean, how can to say that you're wasting your voting for a third party person? Well, then how are you gonna change anything if you don't do that?
Exactly. Exactly.
It's Mobius strip thinking. I mean, it's like it just goes around in a giant circle, never ends.
And you're wasting your vote if you vote for somebody that you really don't want to vote for, and you're wasting your vote if you don't vote at all. That's the worst waste. If you don't vote because you feel like, well, the two major candidates aren't offering anything, hey, there are other people on the ballots. And you get enough votes in there that it kind of messes up that clear-cut electoral college breakdown, and then we could have a very interesting time.
That's what happened in 1992. Ross Perot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I'm right, I'm not certain about this. I think Clinton was the only president ever elected without a majority of the votes. He only got like 42% because Ross Perot got 19%.
Yeah,
And
and Perot would have got more. He dropped out because he couldn't get on the ballots in all the states, so he felt like, well, shouldn't do it. But he kind of waited too late in the game to
yeah,
do that, in my
right.
opinion. It left a lot of people angry. And there's the other myth about elections: who got the most
Hello.
vote? Who got the most votes in the country? There is no national. Oh yeah, I'm here. Are you there?
Yeah, you dropped out
Oh,
for
okay.
just a second.
All that I'm a dropout.
No, you're not.
Uh, there is no national election for the office of president. There are elections held in all 50 states
Yeah,
for the president. Each state, uh, the winner of the most votes in each state gets the electoral college candidates. And people want to get rid of the electoral college and change that. It's it's in the Constitution. It's worked for a long time. They made some law at some point in the 1880s because of uh, you know some votes at that time. I doubt that that's constitutional because Congress doesn't really have the authority to change that unless they do it by a constitutional amendment. They can't do it by law.
well,
Any
there's
yeah,
a lot of people have tried to standardize this across the states, but that's actually unconstitutional too.
well, yeah. I mean the states.
I mean, if all 50 of them, voluntarily adopted a system, yeah. But the thing is, try getting 50 people
Well,
anything to
the
agree on it.
electoral college is set up in the Constitution, and so it would take a constitutional amendment to change the way it works.
Yeah,
But yeah, so there's no national election for president. It doesn't matter if this one got 70 million and this one got 71 million uh, in total across all the country. It matters who won the individual states. There are only the statewide elections
right.
for president, and you add that up. But again, people don't understand the Constitution, and the Constitution has never stood in the way of people in Washington doing whatever it is they want. They claim, well, the people want this, and and maybe the people do want something done along those areas, but it isn't the the government doesn't have the authority to do it. Government cannot fix every problem. Government isn't really good at fixing problems, but uh, the government, federal government, was not set up to deal with every problem that comes along. A lot of
No.
problems are social and cultural and have to be dealt with in society and in the culture, and not by the federal government, not even in some cases by the state government.
So let's end with this last question. Do you think people get the government they deserve? I mean, you were talking about the fact that 40% aren't even registered to vote. I mean,
Well, yeah, that's it. If you don't participate, Mark Twain says, if you don't vote, you can't complain about it. But if you don't participate, certainly, yeah, you're going to end up with the worst possible situation. And uh, if you don't fully participate, even as a registered voter, if you just go in and click the Democrats or click the Republicans, because that's what you said you were, again, the Constitution does not say anything about political parties. A political party is not required for you to vote. It's not required for you to be a candidate. And I think that even having people declare whether they're Republican or Democrat when they register to vote is unconstitutional because there's nothing in the Constitution that says you have to be a member of any political party to exercise your citizens' right to vote.
Yeah. Yeah. Tim, I hope you'll come back.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, we'll have you on regularly to talk about how your campaign's going, and also once again, your website is, and we'll post a link on our blog. It's Conaway for Prez, CONAWAY numeral 4 PREZ.com, and there's contact information there where people can get a hold of you, right?
Right. Yeah, there's the
Right.
email address there. I check my email on
Yeah.
a regular basis, and
And how many videos you have a whole list of videos you're going to post? How many have you posted so far?
I've lost track now, but I've got about I'm going to say at least 10 of them up there. Maybe
That's what I thought. It's about a dozen, right?
yeah, about a dozen. And I try to do a couple a week. I'm doing all this kind of on my own, so it's it's catch as catch can as real life moves on. That's the other thing. I don't have a staff of people, a bunch of personal assistants. I don't have millions of dollars in the bank from insider trading or the other grift that we find in Washington politics. So
I'm gonna just ask. Here's a question just for you that I talked to Mark Tapscott about last night. If your 10-year-old grandkids are getting money from a foreign entity, isn't that enough proof of corruption? Do you actually need the money in your own bank account? I mean, what is your 10-year-old grandson doing for the Chinese government? I mean, it's like,
yeah. Well, yeah. Unfortunately, I've tried to talk to my daughter and granddaughter about expanding their worldview, but yeah, and I don't want China's money or Ukraine's money or any of these other guys' money. I'm not in it for that. That's the other problem is people go to Washington. A lot of them, are wealthy. Most of the people, more than 50% of Congress are millionaires, and certainly, if not millionaires when they get in, by the time they're out, they're millionaires somehow.
yeah,
They get paid $174,000 a year plus all of their travel expenses and their living expenses and all kind of they have a staff of people with millions of dollars in taxpayers' money, and they complain that it's not enough. And they people in Congress complain that the Supreme Court that Congress is going to set up some kind of ethics thing over the Supreme Court, which again is unconstitutional.
it's hilarious. Actually.
Yeah, but at the same time, every time people say, "Well, why doesn't Congress pass a law to make it illegal for members of Congress to do insider trading?" Because right now they can basically take any information they get and trade on the stock market or bonds or futures, and they deflect that question. So until their own ethics are in check, I think they need to stop talking about other organizations' ethics. But Washington is a place people go to get rich and not to serve the people of the country.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on tonight, Tim. I really appreciate it.
Oh, sure. Glad to do it.
We're looking forward to talking to you again.
Yeah.
You got an uphill climb, but it's like what you're doing and what I'm trying to do here. It's okay. Maybe we're small voices, but you take all the people like us trying to do this stuff, and cumulatively, I don't know. I think it makes a difference. Maybe.
Yeah. Well, that's what it's going to take. Is a whole lot of people doing disrupting the status quo.
Yeah. Right.
And doing it the right way. This is the orderly constitutional way to disrupt the status quo is to run new candidates and get people out to vote who haven't been voting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you take care. All right. We'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you
Jim.
so much. Thanks.
You bet. Take
We'll
care.
see you. That was Tim Conaway, presidential candidate for 2024, former editor-in-chief of Hustler magazine and a whole bunch of other magazines, had an illustrious career as an editor and a journalist. He's a good guy. We'll have him on again. He'll give us updates on his campaign on a regular basis. So you can call me now if you want. Third part of the show. This is the part where we take calls. Go to jimatnight.com/call and you'll find the big blue button at the top of the screen. You can press that, and Tim used the same method to get on for his interview as you guys used to call in. And like he said, it's super simple. David, who called in last night, he said it was harder to find our website than it was to call in. That's what he said. So we'll wait a couple of minutes here for your calls, or if you have any. I'm going to address something here that I thought you might find interesting. And I don't know if you noticed this, we did not really talk about politics tonight, other than Tim, of course. But I mean, in the first part of the show and this part too, I'm going to talk about the television ratings, believe it or not. There's a lot of people who think that, especially, and the dividing line might have been Tucker Carlson getting fired from Fox News, that was a very slow beginning to an end of the cable news business. And what that would entail is that, and we're talking about at least 10, maybe 20 years from now. This, like I said, very slow. But at some point, the public is not going to put up with any of this bullshit anymore. And especially because you're voting with your dollars. Now, let me give you an example. My wife watches virtually no live TV, none. She watches sports. She's a sports fanatic, believe it or not. So and especially collegiate sports. So she subscribes to a lot of these, like the Big Ten Network and the Pac-10 Network, and the sports conferences that have their own television networks, or they're online anyway. What's called over-the-top OTT. So she watches women's volleyball on her laptop, and it's really amazing, But people, what we get, it's kind of like what we got going on here. I mean, you have broadcasts from like Bulgaria and Italy in real time sent over the internet. They're not actually broadcast over the airwaves, and they're not on cable television. And she watches that and she pays for it, and God bless her. I think that's great. But my point is that she also, by her own admission, she watches virtually no broadcast television. None. Matter of fact, she said, as far as she's concerned, we can get rid of it. She does now. Now, because I'm obsessed with what I do here, especially live television. I like to watch live TV just to see what people are doing. But if it wasn't for that, I don't think I'd be interested either. So more and more people are going to on-demand television, which is the streaming services. But here's the problem with that. The streaming services are losing money hand over fist, because the way this works is thus. And if there's a guy named John Notley who writes at Breitbart, and he talks about this regularly. He writes about this. He's explained it as well as anybody can. What you don't realize, like if you subscribe to cable television, and when I'm talking about this, I'm also talking about internet cable television, like services like YouTube TV and Hulu Live TV, that sort of thing. Not Roku. Roku is basically on demand. I'm talking about live streaming television now, and I'm including that stuff in cable. And here's the reason, you'll find out in just a second. So you have a cable subscription, let's say through Comcast, right? Or whatever, one of the major providers. And you have maybe 70, 80 channels coming into your basic cable, and then on top of that, you're maybe paying for HBO and all this sort of stuff. And that's separate from it's included in your bill, but you still pay separate, and you're aware of that. But even for what's called basic cable, what you don't realize, well, how come I'm paying $70 a month? Because your cable company pays every one of the channels on your system a monthly fee per subscriber, because so that you can sign on. Now, some judge made a ruling on this like 25 years ago, that it's called a retransmission fee. And the reason it's for copyright reasons, believe it or not. They said that, well, if the cable system is taking a channel and rebroadcasting it to their subscribers, they have to pay to do that. Now, the irony is you can get a lot of television free over the air broadcast, the major, affiliates for the major television networks, that sort of thing. But to do that on a cable system, they have to pay. That's the really weird part. You can get it free, totally free off an antenna. But if the same thing's on your cable system has to pay to be able to do that. And it all comes down to that's based in copyright law in the United States. That's sounds crazy, and it is crazy. And you're paying for shit that would otherwise be free, right? Okay. Now, what you pay per channel depends on the demand for that channel and how much the people who own that channel can negotiate with the cable company. Case in point, single biggest payment on your cable system for ESPN and all the ESPN channels. I don't know how many there are now, 5, 6, 7. I have no idea. I've lost count. But at any rate, you pay, and of course, Disney owns ESPN now, but you pay about $7 of your cable bill to get all the ESPN channels. The irony is here that ESPN has been usurped by Fox News as the most popular, most watched cable channel on your system. The viewership of ESPN has been going down, and viewership of Fox News has been going up. The charge for Fox News is only about $1.50, and that includes Fox Business and Fox Weather and all that other stuff too. So they have a thing going on there too. You're also paying about that same amount of money for CNN, even though no one's. And this is the reason I'm bringing this up. No one's watching CNN. I'm not kidding. CNN's average primetime viewership is 500,000 people, and there's 120 million people with cable television in the United States, and the general rule of thumb is anything under 1 million people is considered zero for all practical for accounting purposes. Nobody's watching. The CNN's ratings have gone down 90% in the last 3 years, basically since Trump left office. They were doing fantastic when Trump was in office, which is the reason if you watch cable news now, it's Trump 24 hours a day. I mean, that's all it is, because they are desperate to get those viewership back. But the thing is, once again, my point is that so CNN, because they're basically the oldest channel on cable television. They started in 1980. They opened a year before MTV even. So they're the oldest cable channel. They have a lot of legacy goodwill. Every single cable company in the United States carries them, and you pay about $1.50 of your cable bill to CNN every month so that your cable system can run that. So that adds up to for CNN. You can do some quick math. It's about like if it's $1 a month and you got 100 million people, it's over $1 billion a year. So that's before they do anything. Before they could put up a test pattern and they're getting $1 billion a year. You see? So okay, their ratings are awful. Now the other way they make money is through advertising, right? Through commercials. Their ratings are terrible, so they're not getting a lot of money from that. But they got $1 billion right off the get-go. They just get $1 billion just for being on television, for being on cable television. So this gravy crane system has existed for years now, but more and more people are dropping cable TV. First quarter of this year, I don't know what the second quarter was, but for the first quarter of this year, 7% of the people who have cable television in the United States dropped it. 7% in 3 months. And this looks like it's going to continue because people are tired of paying these giant bills, and especially there's a lot of television available for free, and even if you have a Roku box, there's Pluto, there's Tubi, there's all these cable networks, and then you got the hybrid ones like Peacock, where some of it's free, but you can pay to see more stuff. There's that too. But there's an enormous amount of television, especially if you don't want live television, you don't want sports or news, and you just want to watch movies and shit or sitcoms. There's an enormous amount of television for free, and then of course there's Netflix, where you're paying now what I think there is about $11 or $12 a month, depending on your tier, whatever it is, and they're devoting $1 billion a year to programming. So And a lot of people think actually that they're oversaturating the market. That's the other thing. There's a perfect storm of crap going on here. Disney's completely fucked themselves over, partly with the woke programming. That gets all of the attention, but also the fact, some people have said, they beat Star Wars to death. They have. I don't want to watch. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. They put like it appears like they put another Star Wars movie out every 3 months. That's what I know they don't, but that's the impression I have. I do not care anymore. And Netflix doesn't have a signature show like that, but they're pumping out so much stuff on a monthly basis that basically you can't keep up. And people are saying, well, that's not the idea. Netflix says the idea is not for you to keep up. The idea is for you to find what you like and watch it. But I'm overburdened by choice. So now all of these, now the streaming systems are losing money hand over fist. So you have an entire industry basically in disarray. And on top of that, now the whole thing's there on strike. That's the other thing too. So, I mean, I didn't realize this because I don't watch these shows anymore. All of the late night comedy talk shows are in reruns, all of them, because they can't hire writers. And even if they did, well, this is interesting. I was talking to my wife about this tonight, about the fact I remember in the 1970s or the 80s, maybe it was, when there was a writer's strike in Hollywood. The Tonight Show kept on going because Johnny Carson said, "Screw it, I'm going to write my own jokes," and he did for about 6 to 8 weeks. He wrote his own jokes every night, and they made fun of it because, all right, he's a brilliant guy, but still, you can't replace 10 writers in a room, by yourself and still, bat 1,000. You can't. And some of it was kind of lame, but he was really good at making fun of himself. So, but the thing is, they wrote it out. It worked. Now my wife said, well, you wouldn't do that nowadays because you'd be going against the union. And I actually never thought about that. My wife also brought up something else too. Or no, not my wife, excuse me, my accountant did. And that is now, I don't quite understand how this works, but apparently a lot of the streaming services are canceling shows because if you cancel a show you've produced and also never air any of the episodes ever again, you can declare it over and you can write the whole thing off as a loss from an accounting standpoint. Now, the weird thing about this is that can never, if you do that, you can never air those episodes ever again, which is the very point of streaming services producing that content so that they have it around forever. I mean, shit, I Love Lucy is still on TV. It was 70 years ago. Dallas is still on television 40 years ago. I mean, the thing about producing dramatic content or scripted content on television is that once you produce it, you can use it forever. And people did. And that's why for the history of television has been that most shows, 1 hour dramatic shows like, Chicago PED or whatever the hell you want to, talk about, or Dallas, or, going back, that all those shows, they were actually produced at a loss because they knew they'd make the money back in reruns. So it would, it's unbelievable. And prime time on broadcast television, they can make in 15 minutes of commercials in prime time, they can make about $1 million every hour every night. So I mean, it's formidable. But yeah, they might pay $1.2 million to have that particular show produced. So they take a little bit of a loss because they know they're going to make it about a back end. My accountant tells me that now the rules have changed so that if they actually not only cancel the show but never use it again, in other words, the show is quote unquote over, they can write the whole thing off as a loss. So from an accounting standpoint now, it's becoming advantageous for them to actually do that. And well, what the hell happens then? Then you got a bunch of shows sitting in the can that no one's ever going to see ever again. I don't know. This is the reason I bring this. I wanted to make you aware of what's going on here because this does not look good. I mean, in certain terms of entertainment and information coming into your home, we might be at a point here of a perfect storm where Barry Diller says he does not think, he was a longtime Hollywood producer and now he runs Interactive Media, which is an internet company, but he does not think the industry is going to survive this in its current form anyway. And that means we'll have a lot less choices and maybe it might cost a lot more. Interesting. I don't know. I want to thank Tim Conaway for joining us tonight. Tomorrow, Oh, I should have said this part at the top of the show. Now I got an interesting. I got a dentist appointment tomorrow, right? Tomorrow afternoon. We're gonna do a show no matter what because I want to air Jazz Shaw's interview from last week, and I think we finally got our technical problems more or less figured out here. But I might not do a lot of talking, and we might not take any phone calls. It depends on how bad my mouth is and how fucked up I am on laughing gas or whatever. I don't know, but we're gonna do a show for sure. So Jazz Shaw, we're gonna run Jazz Shaw's interview tomorrow night, and then we don't have anyone booked for next week, but we're on that. So we'll figure that out. I want to thank you folks for watching. This is our episode number 6. I want to thank Tim Conaway for calling in for a nice interview we had with him. Uncle Donnie, take care of yourself wherever you are. I'll see you tomorrow, folks. Thanks for watching.